Police headquarters here is tense as the search for Walker and Ryan enters its 10th day. This is shown out in the clipped sentences police officials use when they're relating the latest developments in the search mechanism. It's an electric atmosphere. It's shown out with the police reporters and detectives almost living in each other's pockets as they follow up every available lead and they pass it across between their two respective camps. Reporters in the crowded police rounds rooms, waiting by radios to catch the latest call, or, as happened today, the reporters themselves passing over any scrap of information which they think can help the search. In the short time that we were here today, about 10 calls came through claiming that Walker and Ryan were at a certain address.
I now ask you, the public, to help. We are dependent upon you. And cast your mind back to the early morning of Christmas morning, when these men made a hurried exit from their flat in Elwood and would have sought shelter somewhere. Have you heard any strange arrivals at some house next door or flat next door, or the knockings of someone arousing the occupants? Or even if they arrived at some empty house or flat next door? Have you noticed any strange movements at your next door flat or house? If you have, contact the police and we will do the rest.
What about these two escapees themselves? What sort of people are they? Here's Peter Baster with his report.
Police say that the two escapees are violent criminals made doubly dangerous by desperation. The ringleader is 41-year-old Ronald Ryan. Detective Sergeant Arthur Slater, who has known Ryan for years, said that he is an egotist who will try and match his wits against the police. Ryan is said to read every newspaper article about himself, listen to radio news bulletins and watch television. He's quietly spoken and speaks well and is a man of great confidence. He wins people over very easily. Before his last series of burglaries, which totalled £45,000 and which he was serving a sentence for at the time of his escape, he had had a very good job in the city office.
This two-paragraph statement announcing Ryan's stay of execution climaxed a 5-hour hide-and-seek drama between the Premier Sir Henry Bolte and a crowd of waiting newsmen today, and culminated in his ordering cameramen from the premises of state offices. For the first time in the memory of veteran state roundsmen, the normally easily accessible Premier did not wish to be seen, and took extreme measures to ensure that things remained that way. When Sir Henry's car arrived soon after 10 o'clock this morning, it continued 100 yards past the Premier's office. As cameramen ran forward, it suddenly reversed back, and Sir Henry ducked out and hurried inside. At 1:10, the ministers filed out, and the door to the corridor was closed and blocked behind them. Later we were told the Premier had left, but waiting cameramen assured us not by the front or back doors.
The time and date for the execution of Ronald Joseph Ryan was decided in 12 minutes at this morning's meeting of the State Executive Council. The meeting began at 9 a.m. and was attended by the Premier of Victoria, Sir Henry Bolte, the State Governor, Sir Rowan Delacombe, and the Acting Attorney General, Mr. Wilcox. Ryan was told of the decision a few minutes later as he waited in the condemned cell at Pentridge Jail. Just before 9:30, the clerk of the Executive Council, Mr. Cahoon, met newsmen waiting outside the Governor's office in the old Treasury building. He made a short statement to them, and this was it. The Executive Council met today, and its decision is that the sentence of death on Ronald Ryan will be carried into execution on Tuesday, January the 31st, at 8 a.m. in the forenoon, within the walls or confined yard of Pentridge Jail. Brian Peck for ABC National News in Melbourne.
I understand that Ronald Ryan was told of the decision in his cell at Pentridge just before 10 o'clock. At 10:20, this statement was handed to waiting newsmen. It reads in part, "Cabinet has given full consideration to the material supplied by Ryan's solicitor and advice tendered by the Crown solicitor. The affidavit by Ptolemy, which formed the basis upon which Mr. Justice Stark granted a stay of execution, was withdrawn by the solicitor. Cabinet is satisfied that there are no reasons why the sentence pronounced by the court should not be carried out. The sentence of death will be carried out at 8 a.m. on Friday, the 3rd of February, 1967. Soon after the decision was announced, Sir Henry Bolte spoke with newsmen. Questioned about the reason for the early cabinet meeting, the Premier said that there'd been no secrecy involved. Sir Henry said that he didn't believe the government should subscribe to some of the unruly demonstration scenes of the past week or so. The only reason Cabinet met early was to avoid this.
Ugly and a rather unpleasant scene here in Melbourne. The organisers are trying to pacify them, and to some extent they seem to have got control. Mounted police, 2 mounted police are now coming in to help out. As a sidelight, they have managed to hang up a noose on the side of the Parliament gates here, and also they've got banners there. This is probably the first time for many, many, many years that the Parliament House in Victoria has been attacked in this way. Brian Peck for ABC National News in Melbourne.
Right. March along Sydney Road. I'll pull the cords out of both of them, mate.
On your way. No worries. Let's go. Yeah, he's all right. I'll give it.
Ryan final decision, slate 1, take 1. It took the Victorian Cabinet roughly 3/4 of an hour this morning to decide the fate of Ronald Ryan. The Cabinet met at the early hour of 8:30, and all Cabinet ministers were present, except the Minister for Fuel and Power, Mr. Reid, who's overseas. The decision to hang Ryan was later confirmed by the State Executive Council meeting at Government House. The State Opposition Leader, Mr. Clive Stoneham, later released this brief statement. I cannot see how Cabinet could possibly have given proper consideration to the further submissions made by Ryan's solicitor yesterday. This means that in dereliction of his oath of office, a tyrannical Premier has forced ministers opposed to capital punishment into submission to his outrageous obsession to hang Ryan. This can only be described as having no precedent in the history of Australia. Ray Thomas for ABC National News in Melbourne.
Well, Ron wanted to get to do something that would bring in money and make the richer people that had the money expand and give it into industries and things that would bring in more money for the working men. Just something like that.
In a way, I suppose it's ironic that tomorrow morning he's going to do something just like that.
Yes, something just like that.
How does he feel about this, the fact that he might well be the last person?
Well, he said it would do good to others. He said if someone had to make the sacrifice, he didn't mind it being him. It is a very unjust thing because, as he said, had he been guilty, he may have deserved it, but not being guilty, he doesn't deserve it. Mr. Barty, had he listened to the appeals and given him time, it may have been proved. He could have brought other witnesses, perhaps, that would have seen it and known that it didn't happen that way. No, he's quite sure the gun didn't go off. He said he had it in his hand and he felt it didn't go off. It didn't.
Yeah.
So he knows that he didn't do it.
They wouldn't let you touch him.
Well, I did kiss him, but they didn't
I know.
let me kiss him.
Would you tell me about that? Would you tell me why they wouldn't let you touch him?
Well, they don't like you to have contact with the prisoners. They're afraid you'll give them something or pass something to them, something like that. But 'tis the rule of the prison that you mustn't have contact with them. But the opportunity came and I took it.
You must be very happy now that Ronald's made his confession.
Well, yes, we don't discuss religion really in that matter. It's sort of ended now, but I had my doubts that he would come back to the church, but now he has done so. That's a sure sign that he'll die a happy death, you see what I mean? He's not just leaving the world behind. He can do things maybe up there that he couldn't do on earth. So it'll still go on.
Yes. Father said that Ronald had said of the Catholic Church that it was a hard religion to live in, but it was an easy one to die in. Were you there when he said that?
No, I wasn't there when he said that. It's just very hard to keep up to it, I know, but still.
This is hanging. We know the slate number, we don't know a slate number. Hanging front slate. Street interviews. What do you think of Sir Henry's lumping together of all the Viet Nixon protesters and the general attack on the integrity of people who are concerned over the Ryan case?
Well, I think it's blatantly dishonest. I can't believe that he believes this. If he does believe it, I think he's rather foolish. I think if he can, in the same breath, lump together...
He's just an arrogant peasant and he's up on his farm now.
Represent... Oh, look, come on. Can you be quiet for a moment while I have my say?
Started off saying, as far as Sir Henry's smear, or, in other words, pose the subject for me so I don't have to ask a question.
Yes, all right then. I think that Sir Henry Bolte's attitude on this is terribly regrettable. I think if he can honestly brand together those people who protest about Vietnam and protest against capital punishment, he's being intellectually dishonest. You can't ignore the opinions of representatives of all the major churches. You can't ignore the opinions of other parliamentarians. You can't ignore the opinions of prison education officers. You can't ignore the opinions of parole officers. You can't ignore the opinions of social workers. You can't ignore the opinions of university teachers. You can't ignore the opinions of the ordinary person in the street because public opinion has changed so much since the Tate case in '62. He's just flying in the face of public opinion, enlightened public opinion.
Himself up as
Goodness
God.
me, it's every enlightened community in the world has abandoned capital punishment. It seems that Sir Henry is determined that his last stand as Premier in Victoria should be to highlight the fact that his mind cannot be changed once it's made up, that the Tate case debacle, as far as he was concerned, where he had to change his mind, won't be repeated. I feel that this is why Ryan's hanging in the morning.
Street interviews, Common Street. Take one. Excuse me, can I stop you? Mike Cridson's my name. I'm from the ABC. I want to know how responsible you feel for the Ryan execution tomorrow.
It's out of my hands, dear boy. Out of my hands.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's, I have nothing to do to say about it.
You're a member of the community that's going to do it. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
I haven't gave it a thought, really, truly.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I haven't gave it a very serious thought. I've heard a lot of discussion about it, and it's in the other hands, isn't it?
It's not important to you as an individual?
Well, I mean, it's a very serious thing, and I mean, it's a thing that you'd have to give a lot of thought to, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that, well, I mean, without a lot of thought, you...
Are you in favour of capital punishment, or have you not thought about that at all either?
Well, I'm like a lot that believe that we should have advanced beyond that stage. But whether he had or not, I mean, you've got to have some sort of a deterrent to people, I mean, haven't you?
I'm against what they're doing. I reckon they should have started with Tate and a few other fellas. I don't like hanging myself, but honestly, I'm pretty young, you know, yourself looking at me, but hang Baldy's my opinion if they're going to hang anyone, because look, honestly, they should have started with Tate and a few other fellas. What's the use starting with Ryan? Now, you be honest with me. They're making an example of him out of everyone. Now, look, he's killed a warden, and so they say, but what about the fellas who have killed little girls and that? They should have started with them, if anyone.
I want to know how responsible you feel for the hanging of Ronald Ryan tomorrow.
Oh, I think he should be, definitely.
Yeah, why?
Well, I reckon there's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and because you've got to stop all these other murders happening around the place. I saw 19 in the city court in one day. I think there should be stiffer penalties for murders that's going on around here. Should be. That's the trouble.
What
That's
do you
an
think?
example.
Sorry. Go on. You going to say anything?
No, I'm right, thanks.
What do you think of all the people who are protesting and trying to get him off?
I think, well, they've got the right to voice their disapproval, but I wouldn't join them.
Yeah. You think it's fair enough just to execute a man for revenge, do you? The eye for an eye thing? Or do you
Not
think it's
for
gotta be a
revenge,
deterrent?
but it depends on the circumstances. I mean, and under this case where that warder was killed, it was just cold-blooded murder, and that's where it's justified.
Was it cold-blooded murder? Wasn't it something that happened in the heat of the moment?
Well, you don't know, do you? Oh, well, I suppose. Could be, it could not be. But the courts, they've gone up to the Privy Council and still failed, so it must be. It must have been.
You're quite satisfied with the law as it is at the moment, are you?
Definitely.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to see a royal commission into capital punishment?
Oh, I suppose there should be one.
What about you? Do you want to see a royal commission into capital punishment?
Oh, I don't know. I just think that can't see why Ryan should be picked out. There's worse murders being committed than him. I can't see why he should be picked out for this one.
So it's just it's a question of unfairness as far as you're concerned?
Oh, I think so. But if they don't stop him, well, the warders, they might feel unsafe or something like that, you know.
It's been shown fairly conclusively that it doesn't really protect the warders at all.
Oh, I don't think so. I can't see why he should get out of it. I mean, shouldn't be let off.
Fair enough. What do you think?
Well, I feel that, although I'm not an advocate of capital punishment, I feel that if he is not hung, anybody serving life imprisonment would see that he's got nothing to lose by killing a warder and trying to escape. And that's the reason why he should be hung.
How do you feel about the process of actually hanging a man?
Oh, I don't like it very much, but I feel it's necessary in this case.
Excuse me. Mike Cridson's my name. I'm from the ABC. I want to know how you as a member of the community feel about the Ronald Ryan execution tomorrow.
I don't approve of it at all. I think it's a needless act, because I don't think that execution of prisoners serves any purpose whatsoever. I don't think I can say much more than that. I think Mr. Bolte's acting rather pig-headedly, not listening to what are reasonable arguments, and well, I don't know, if he wants to be a dictator, this is the way to go about it.
Yeah, sure. What would you like to see happen as far as the whole question of capital punishment is concerned?
I'd like to see it abolished. I don't think it serves any purpose, like I said before.
Would you like to see a Royal Commission in this, or what action should be taken?
Well, I don't know, as far as I can see, it should simply be abolished, and that's about the beginning and the end of it. I can't see any purpose it serves.
What do you think about it?
I'm for it. I think Bolte's quite right in sticking to his guns, and I don't see why hanging isn't a great deterrent to criminals. If that isn't, I don't know what is. And, well, even if they are wrong to hang Ryan, I think they should get on with it and sort of stop this sob stuff campaign that they're having.
Yes.
And then, when it's done, then have your commission. It seems a bit late now. They've decided, and I think all they can do is stick by what they've decided.
How do you feel about actually thinking tomorrow at 8 o'clock about the process of hanging that man?
I'm not thinking about it that way. I think you've got to stop being emotional. Once all the processes of the law have gone through, I don't think you can sort of think, well, I am personally involved in this. I don't feel personally involved. Perhaps it's because it isn't close enough to me, but I think that they should just get on with it and then have your Royal Commission if you need it.
I don't like it one little bit at all.
Why do you feel involved?
Well, I think it's a crime to take another man's life legally this way. I mean, war is a different thing, but to take it cold-bloodedly, I don't agree with it at all. One little bit. I feel very sad about it, and very involved myself.
Quiet sound, atmosphere outside Pentridge, the morning of the hanging. Things are rather quiet.
thing that struck me and has stayed with me forever is the smell of the disinfectant they used. It was just overpowering. It just had almost a medieval atmosphere in it. It was terrible. First thing we saw suddenly from the cell block on the right, directly opposite the catwalk, the hangman came out, and he was dressed in a boiler suit, and he had big welding goggles on and a cloth cap pulled down, and he scurried straight across to the cell opposite, which was obviously the condemned cell. And about 30 seconds later, he came out with Ronald Ryan, who was escorted by the governor and Father Brosnan. And Ryan had his hands tied behind his back. He had what I thought was a pile of cloth on the top of his head. And it was only 4 or 5 steps for him to get to the trapdoor, which was in the centre of the catwalk. And he looked terribly calm, but the feeling I had, oh God, it was just awful. And the hangman brought him to the centre of the catwalk and clearly stood him on the trapdoors. Ryan turned to face us, and he just looked down, and there seemed to be a bit of a smile on his face. He was terribly calm and terribly dignified. The hangman took the rope, took the noose, and put it over Ryan's head and knotted the rope just under the corner of the chin there. And as he pulled the hood down over Ryan's face, and he actually leapt for the lever to pull the thing. I just closed my eyes. I couldn't take it anymore. The scene was just so horrendous. And there was this almighty crash as the metal trapdoors swung open and bashed back against the catwalk stops. It was a hell of a racket. And I'm told that those outside in the demonstration knew that the execution had been done because the pigeons flew off the dome, which was directly above it. That's an everlasting memory too. And when I opened my eyes, Ryan was gone. And just the rope was swinging, creaking like you hear in a chimney. Dreadful scene.
What was the reaction, Brian, of those who were there as official witnesses?
No reaction. There was just absolute silence from everybody. It was just eerie, just the creaking of the rope. And I could hear the murmur of Father Brosnan's voice. He'd come down from that first floor and was behind the screen delivering the last rites.
Go forth, O Christian soul, to heaven, which is thy true country. Flights of angels greet thee and lead thee to paradise, which is thy true home.
So, Henry, how do you feel? How do you feel, sir?
Oh, I feel the same as yesterday.
Quite happy. What's it like to be Henry Boltey, citizen of Victoria?
Well, I'll tell you at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That's when it takes place.
launched this bill because I believe in it.
Why?
Well, I wasn't always of this opinion. I took the view in the past that if capital punishment, being on the statute book, saved even one innocent life a year, it was worth keeping there. I've studied all the evidence available from all around the world, and I'm of the opinion now that it does not do that.
Are you sorry now that it did become a free vote for your party?
No, not a bit. I think it's the very appropriate issue for a free vote. We've had them before, but this is a matter of social conscience. It's a matter of the opinions that people have, and of course it's an issue which divides the community. The community is uncertain which is the best.
How many members of your own party are opposed to the abolition of capital punishment?
Opposed?
Parliamentary party.
Yeah, well, I think that the parliamentary party is divided about equally, just as the community itself is divided about equally.
What about cabinet?
About equally.
You don't have any trouble at all understanding the mentality, the arguments of those who are still in favour of it in 1975?
No, I do not, because I shared those views before myself.
What made you change?
Simply studying all the evidence available, simply studying what the records were in other countries, how opinions had changed in other countries, how they were changing here.
Were you opposed to Ronald Ryan being hanged?
I'm not prepared to say. I was a member of a cabinet at that time.
It has been speculated that you were opposed at that time.
Well, speculation is always speculation.
Well, did that have any bearing on your opinion today about capital punishment?
I have formed my opinion, as I said, on records and on writings and on study of the evidence, because it's always been my opinion that the death penalty had to be justified by some high public policy, that it was in fact protecting the community against murderers, and that evidence is not now available, it's not now convincing, and therefore I think the whole reason for having the death penalty has gone.
Do you envisage that there'll be any amendments to the bill?
Oh, I couldn't say. It's an ordinary bill. It will follow the same course as any bill in the Parliament.
Well, the Country Party has foreshadowed amendments. Is it possible that these amendments could change the bill from an abolition bill to one of merely narrowing the grounds for which
I
people
haven't seen
could
the amendments. I can't answer that.
But it's possible, though, that amendments could change the whole idea of the bill abolishing.
Anything's possible. It's a bill. It's before the Parliament to discuss.
What are the chances of a Country Party amendment reducing the grounds for capital punishment?
I think the debate will be very, very tight, or the actual vote will be very tight in the Legislative Assembly. The Premier can rely on all the votes of members of the Labor Party, but he's got substantial divisions within his own party, and then I think the Country Party will be voting against abolition as such. So I would think that there's no more than a 50-50 chance at the moment of the bill going through the Legislative Assembly.
Our policy is decided by our annual conference of the party, and many years ago and been reaffirmed in favour of capital punishment. But I don't believe this will be a yes/no vote. I believe that it could well be that a compromise will come out of this debate, which could well reduce the number of grounds for capital punishment, but perhaps retain it for some of the ones, such as hijacking, killing policemen, warders, abducting of children. Personally, I think this could well be the result of the debate that will take place in the near future.
At that cabinet meeting that determined that Ryan would hang, what reservations did you have?
I had several. First of all, I was beginning to doubt whether the death penalty was effective or relevant at all. But more than that, it was almost an accidental killing. I mean, Ronald Ryan was running away and he fired hastily and happened to kill a pursuing warder. But there'd been much more serious, violent murders than that, which had been commuted from death to life imprisonment. And we were being pressed in this one by the Premier and Deputy Premier not to commute Ronald Ryan's. And I thought it was out of sequence, so to speak, to do it in this one case.
In retrospect, looking back over the years, do you wish you could have done more at that cabinet meeting or spoken out more strongly?
No, it was quite a debate. I mean, we all had the chance to have our say. I did speak up. But the weight of opinion in the cabinet was strongly the other way. And those of us who had reservations were entitled and did express them. But it was obviously, and the vote went in favour of not commuting the sentence.
So you had a sense it was fait accompli, that was the
move? It was obvious, yes, it was.
Do you hold regrets about the case and what happened?
Well, I do for those reasons, that I thought he was probably the least appropriate one to have the sentence carried out, when much more serious murders had escaped it, so to speak. And I thought it just confirmed how hit and miss this can be, and from then on I was much more convinced than before that the death sentence was inappropriate in a modern community.
And so what effect did it have upon you?
Well, I decided, that I was in favour of abolishing the death penalty.
So eventually you were the Premier to bring in legislation to end capital punishment in Victoria.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Well, I was glad to be able to do it. I was glad to see that there was overwhelming support for it. I mean, it's got to be considered by the party first, and it was interesting that the party was strongly in favour of it, and so was the whole Parliament. So it was good, and it was time to do it, I think.
What would Henry Bolte have thought of your actions?
I think he was coming round to it too. He was upset by the Tate case, where a very horrible murder was in the end the justice, in his view, was frustrated by an appeal which the High Court allowed on the ground that he was mentally unstable. I can't put it any higher than that, I don't know. And the other conviction that Henry Bolte had at that time was that the community owed it to the handlers of criminals, the police and warders and so on, to protect them to the utmost as far as we could. So the fact that this was a warder who'd been killed by Ronald Ryan was another factor with him. No, I think it's a case of the conscience of the community developing. And we brought in when we brought in abolishing death sentence was fairly new, but it was all the countries of Europe followed, and it's worldwide except America.
And was that a source of pride for you?
Oh well, yes, pride that we had the chance to do something about it, and we did it with fairly general approval.
And largely because of what had happened with Ronald Ryan.
I think so. I think that sort of sharply affected the community as a whole.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
You sought something out of that, I hope.
Yes, of course.
The Ronald Ryan trial, hanging and subsequent campaign that ended capital punishment in this country left many of those involved in the case tormented.
I've recurring bad dreams even now, in which I envisage this brutal execution.
The hanged man's grandchildren spoke at a small service outside the old Pentridge Prison bluestone walls.
He was a very special man whose passing changed the lives of many, and he'll remember forever. He may have been a petty criminal, but he was never a man who could take the life of another.
Ronald Ryan was hanged for shooting a prison guard, George Hodson, during an attempted jail escape. Although some raised doubt about Ryan's guilt, Mr Hodson's daughter believes he pulled the trigger. Regardless, she came today to speak out against capital punishment.
When I was a child of 13 or 14 when it happened, my view was eye for an eye. And about 10 years ago, I realised that it definitely wasn't the way to go.
The Victorian State Government has committed to building a memorial garden on the site where Ronald Ryan was buried. Paul Kennedy, ABC News.